Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Dr. Anarita Bashaleva, along with co-host Dr. Victor Fett, Dr. Katerina Shrey, and our program producer, Professor Larry Sherey. We host a weekly discussion panel on Russia's war on Ukraine with guests from Ukraine, military experts, medical personnel, academics, artists, literary figures, and relief workers. Our panel is recorded and circulated nationally and internationally. We appreciate your comments and feedback. Special thanks to Marshall University Libraries and MUIT for making this weekly event possible. If you're joining us live on Teams, please feel free to use the chat to post any question for our guest. A quick greetings to our viewers in Ukraine from Dr. Katerina Shrey.
Вітаємо наших слухачів в Україні з глибоким покліном. Ми далі свідки вашого страшного терпіння і також вашої великої сили. Дякую вам за вашу участь в нашій тижневій програмі.
Thank you, Katerina. Today's guest will be introduced by Professor Victor Fett.
Thank you, Anara. I am glad to welcome everyone to our 130th weekly meeting of Ukraine podcast. We have a special guest today from across the Atlantic, Dr. Valentin Yemelin from Norway, with a talk on environmental impact of the war in Ukraine. I will pass microphone to Valentin, who will introduce himself and his outfit and tell us a lot about this often neglected topic of environmental consequences of the Russian war in Ukraine. Valentin, please, microphone is yours.
Thank you, Victor. I much appreciate. First of all, thank you for your kind invitation to join this distinguished panel. I'm very happy to contribute to the increase of knowledge on this subject, which I find extremely important. And before I'll go to my presentation, just a few words about the subject itself. I was sharing with Victor prior to the meeting a few minutes ago that I'm very happy that this topic is now propelling to the bigger audience. And we just had a few days ago, we had a political rally in Arendal, where I am now. It's the small town in the south of Norway. If someone doesn't know that, I'm pretty sure you don't. But that's where it is. And annually we have so-called Arendal's Week, where we have all the guests, all the stakeholders, all the main players in Norway. It's a political rally. It's all the parties are here presenting their programs, as well as the NGOs, as well as, anyone who wants to be seen on the national level is here in Arendal for a week, and it just ended this Friday. We were hosting a number of events. And one of the events was exactly focusing on the environmental impacts of war, not just in Ukraine, but the wars in general. And we were lucky to have the Prime Minister of Norway here, the head of the NORAD, the Agency for International Development, the representative from UNDP. We are representing UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, and it was a high-level panel, which means that this topic is propelled to the decision-makers level. And of course, the Russian war against Ukraine was one of the key speaking points, and I will tell you a little bit more about it. But just wanted to start with this, with sharing this good news that we think it will be now very much on the international agenda as well. So I represent the Norwegian foundation. It's called Norwegian Stiftelse in Norwegian. It is the non-profit organization, which is a UNEP partner, meaning that we are working for United Nations Environment Program. and we very much are part of the UN system. So our work is environmental information. We have been established by the government of Norway more than 35 years ago. So we are pretty well established organization. And we closely work with United Nations on environmental issues. And in particular, our main stakeholders are the government of Norway, Ministry of Climate and Environment, the Norwegian International Development Agency, as well as United Nations Environment Program and other UN agencies. So this is a little bit of the background to understand who we are. So we are, just next slide is I'm explaining a little how we work. So we're small, we're less than 50 people, but we're working with partners worldwide. We collect environmental data and information and make it accessible. And what is more important, we try to put it into some action. So we work with high-level decision makers, normally on the level of national governments. And we also work with United Nations Environment Program on the level of United Nations Environmental Assembly, which is the meeting of all ministers of environment around the world. It is the most distinguished panel of actors in environment globally. So we work closely, as I said, with UN agencies, other strategic partners, with governments. Since we closely work with Norwegian Development Agency, we work with developing countries, and in particular in Africa, but other countries as well. We have 4 programs. I will not go into these details. If you would like to know more, there is a website, grida.no, and we can talk later after the presentation. But I won't divert from the main topic of the presentation. So the major focus, of course, is development and fulfillment of sustainable development goals. We also work on climate change in supporting the Paris Agreement and other international environmental conventions. And if to sum it up, we make or at least try to make the environmental knowledge and data accessible and motivational to take desirable action. So to the topic of today's presentation, we have started the work on this topic right after the invasion. And I think we were probably the first to produce the report on the environmental impact of the war in Ukraine. And you see on this slide a few examples of our products. And this one, the environmental impact of the war in Ukraine, was the first publication commissioned by UNEP, and that was kind of interesting. They came to us immediately and said, well, we need to produce something very quickly, so please help us with that. And we started with the assessment of the environmental impact of military conflicts in general, and focusing on, of course, the topic of the war in Ukraine right away, and produced it very quickly. So and got the special thanks from the Secretary General of the United Nations Environment Program. And here's the publication. But it is an interesting story about it, because just to give you an example how UN works. So what we were not, for example, so happy with, that the publication is called The Environmental Impact of the Conflict in Ukraine. So we were just pointing out that this is actually the war, and it should be headed as the war in Ukraine. However, UN is very cautious in formulation. It goes back and forth on all decision makers level. And finally, they came up with the heading, the environmental impact of the conflict in Ukraine. So that was the first stumbling point, but this is where we are, and this is how UN works. But we, on the sort of factual level, we were able to collect as many in facts and information as possible, put it under one cover, and this report is available, and that has started the chain of publications throughout already 2+ years. It is they're quite a lot. But I think we were the first to start this topic and to draw attention. It worked very well in terms of drawing attention to the environmental consequences of the war in Ukraine. For another example is what we're currently working on is the asbestos debris hazards in Ukraine. Working with private stakeholders, with UN agencies, and trying to assess the size of the problem, because there is a particular issue on debris in demolished settlements where a lot of asbestos was being used in construction. So there's a need for this assessment. That's what we are now trying to do together with Ukrainian partners, assessing the scope of the problem, what to do about it, and how to handle the asbestos-containing debris. Also, at the same time, we are working on the assessment report with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe on the disaster risk reduction related to impacts of the war against Ukraine. So these are the main topics that we're handling in this regard at the moment, and we're determined to continue this work. And now we have a full support of the government of Norway. And this topic, as I said in the beginning, is taking the momentum. So just I will just give you a few figures, maybe a little bit cumbersome and maybe overwhelming, but I will go through some figures, and then we can talk maybe after the presentation. Some findings from the report, and mind, it was right in 2022. It was quite an early production. I think we finished it by summer, by May even. So there was just preliminary data, preliminary analysis. And what I need to say in general about the topic, it's very difficult to get the reliable figures. It's very much an estimate. During the conflict, there is a lot of propaganda from all sides. There is very difficult to have an objective information, but we try to be based on the most reliable sources. But there is, of course, always this constraint that these figures may not be verified by independent sources. So this is the problem. However, we do what we can. So some preliminary first level of analysis definitely show that there are millions of tons of debris. There is definitely confirmed contamination of soil and water. Immediately, we estimated that it was at least 220,000 hectares of forest damaged right away. Hundreds of dolphins, for example. There is a huge blow to biodiversity. Like dolphins in the Black Sea, we got figures from hundreds to thousands. And at least 20% of all nature conservation areas have been affected. Of course, we cannot pass this fact of ecocide and the catastrophic consequences of Kakhovka Dam demolition. And to name few bullet points related, the water supply loss has been estimated as cut-off irrigation of 584,000 hectares of farmland, drinking water of over to supply to over 700,000 people. Ecosystem damage over 43 fish species, including commercially significant, have been affected by this ecocide. 11 protected areas, which covered more than 250,000 hectares, have been impacted. Not talking about pollution, of course, and the floodwaters, which were sweeping fertilizers, pesticides, everything that was in the soil, and also when it was exposed to the air erosion, it was put all these toxic components have been put into the air, creating hypoxic zones in the Black Sea and many more consequences. There is actually a report. Another report was not done by us. It was also done by United Nations Environment Program, which exclusively covered the environmental consequences of Kakhovka Dam. There are other publications which I would probably have to note also concerning environmental consequences of the war in Ukraine. Now we can have a preliminary 12-month assessment covering until to February 23, which gives us the following findings. Forestry and fires, of course, are the result of the direct military consequences. Like, for example, fires have destroyed huge areas covering more than 1 million football pitches. Well, this is probably the American way of presenting the area, but okay. About 770,000 hectares of agricultural land have been damaged, which was estimated to have the loss of 317,000 tons of grain. Obviously, biodiversity loss, approximately estimated to 1 million hectares of protected areas that have been affected, including 160 territories of the Emerald Network, covering 2.9 million hectares. Water resources and pollution, ammonia concentrations in river water, for example, have increased by 163 times, and nitrate levels have risen to by 50 times. So, and again, this is estimates, but still, I think they're significant figures. And also, not the last but not the least, is nuclear and radiation risks, and particularly the risks that are associated with Zaporozhye nuclear power stations, which is captured by the Russian forces, and potential risks are still there, which can, of course, pose significant threat to Ukraine, and not only Ukraine, but neighboring countries as well. Now we may cover the agricultural damage, and Ukraine being called the breadbasket of Europe. Of course, the total damage of the agricultural sector is estimated at around more than $10 billion. And there are more figures. Maybe, I don't know if you would like to then look at the presentation, but just go through very quickly through a few, concentrating on agricultural damages. The total damage is estimated at 10.3, as I said, billion dollars. Livestock losses at $5.6 billion, primarily to reduction in herd size and decreased productivity. Milk production has been quite affected. Crop losses estimated at $34.3 billion, reflected reduced yields, damaged land, and disruption in farming activities, not to say of the land contamination by landmines, which will have the prolonged effect, and the clearance of the landmined areas will cost a lot. Perennial crops estimated at 769 million, which linked to the estimated annual reduction in harvest of 458 tons. Honey production, for example, is estimated to decline by 25-30%. And Ukraine is one of the biggest producers of honey. Rising input costs, of course, additional losses of 3.2 billion in 22 only estimated, and I don't know how much in 23, but obviously not less. So it has contributed to global food insecurity. Of course, it's well known that Ukraine and Russia account to 1/3 of global grain production and exports, and these exports have been disrupted by war, which is, of course, a threat to food a threat, and contributes to food insecurity globally. Fertilizer export reducing cereal production by 16%, for example. Estimated food price increases. Vulnerable regions, of course, estimated Africa and South Asia that depend on the grain exports, worsening food insecurity, and so on. Of course, the military conflict is ongoing. The war has caused, overall, the estimates they vary. But I collected few figures. The estimates are about $56.4 billion. And environmental damage only, including widespread contamination of air, water, soil, and ecosystems. And of course, this is just the pretty much surface analysis, because these consequences will last long time and cover at least few tens of years. Environmental losses could be summed up. I have touched upon forest fires already. Approximately 65,000 acres of forest have been burned in the Chernobyl exclusive zone, which is increasing, obviously, the risk of radioactive contamination, spread of radioactive isotopes to territories. Not talking about deforestation. Emergency legislation in Ukraine has released logging rules, resulting in increased logging in ancient beech forest in the Carpathian Mountains. Toxic contamination by chemicals, which are coming from damaged industrial facilities, heavy metals, mercury, arsenic, lead, you name it, entering soil, water, and other media. So the contamination, of course, poses a long-term risk to the environment and to the society. The last but not the least threat to biodiversity. As I mentioned, Ukraine is home to 35% of European biodiversity, and it has been significantly affected by the war. Natural habitats have been disrupted by conflict. Protected areas, wetlands, forests are at high risk. What also has to be mentioned is in terms of the climate change contribution, we are all talking about this CO2 emissions. The military conflicts increase the CO2 emissions to a considerable level. The war has added 150 million tons of CO2, and I think these figures are underestimated because nearly every week we have the reports on the destruction of the oil reserves or fuel storages or whatever fuel containing areas and storages contributing to global effects of to combat climate change. And of course, it has cross-border impact. It is not only stays in the territory of Ukraine, it spills over the borders. There's no borders for environmental damage, and it's definitely is affecting neighboring countries as well. Just maybe to say a few words about the needs for recovery and the reconstruction. So what we are trying to say to decision makers is that the war is ending sometime. Yes, all wars are ending. So this war will end also. We don't know when. We hope sooner, but then later. But it will end. So the reconstruction, of course, will be necessary, and of course, the construction is going even now every day when the war is in active phase. But reconstruction is going on simultaneously. The point is that we are trying to get the message through to decision makers that reconstruction has to take into consideration environmental issues. So the total reconstruction costs have been estimated at $486 billion over the next decade. It's a huge amount of money. And this is only just mine. This is cost of reconstruction and recovery for the next decade, they say. This is the estimates of the World Bank. This is a reputable organization, so we should trust it. And it represents significant increase from previous estimate, which was 411 billion. This was corrected now and I'm afraid it's not the last correction. So corrected from 411 to 486 billion, and I don't know what will be the new correction at the end of this year. Immediate needs, the Ukrainian authorities themselves estimated that at least 15 billion will be required only in 24 alone for immediate recovery and reconstruction priorities, which includes debris clearance, which will cost approximately $11 billion. And here, that's what I mentioned before. We are trying to work with asbestos debris, asbestos-containing debris, and that is also part of this problem. The total environmental and forestry recovery will need 2.1 billion. Specific recovery projects in forestry natural resources have been outlined to restore damaged ecosystems and protect biodiversity and cover the biodiversity loss if it is possible. Debris clearance, which I mentioned, and emergency response about the need about 11 billion estimate. Emergency response and civil protection efforts are expected to require about $2.1 billion. Water supplies and sanitation is very important, and the recovery will take about $10 billion in restoring access to clean water and repairing sanitation infrastructure. And agriculture and irrigation will also include restoring productive capacity and managing water resources, which will require around $50 billion with specific need on irrigation of 9.7 billion. I think I'm flooding you with figures, but just giving you an estimate of huge needs of investment in this area, and unfortunately, it's not the end of story. Maybe I just will. The time is already 30 minutes. I wanted just to finish the presentation with presenting our team. We have a small team. As I said, I head the Transboundary Governance and Environmental Crime Program, and our team is quite an interesting one. On the right is one Natalia, who is Russian. On the left is another Natalia, who is Ukrainian, and this is Teo Septiona, who is Indonesian. And we have other consultants there in the program, but this is our core staff. So we cooperate here among other topics, as I can cover them later if you have questions. But one of the flagships that we have now is the environmental consequences of military conflicts, and Ukraine is our main priority at the moment. So thank you for your attention. I think if you have questions, I'm very happy to answer them, and I will pass them to Victor to facilitate the discussion. Thank you.
Valentin,
Thank you very much, Dr. Yemelin.
Valentin, could you stop sharing your screen now so that we could just get you and the other participants on?
Okay.
Thank you.
So it worked?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yemelin. Thank you for comprehensive and amazing topic. And I open the panel for comments and questions. Anara, please. Unmute yourself. You're muted. You're muted, Anara. We don't hear you.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. I hope more people will learn about this environmental crime. And it's something new we actually face in this region. And my question, could you compare environmental crime in Ukraine with any other cases across the world? And are there any successful or not successful stories how international community address similar situation?
Yes, thank you, Anara, for your question. Yes, we are comparing. Currently, actually, may be interesting to say that we are assessing simultaneously the war in Gaza, and this is presenting some somewhat same and somewhat different problems. For example, compared to Ukraine, Gaza is an extremely compact area. So there is a lot of destruction in the settlements, in these very dense populations, to around 2 million people and the 40 square kilometers. This is the most densely populated area in the world. And compared to Ukraine, which has vast territory, and these negative environmental impacts are sort of scattered on the territory, and some territories are extremely exposed and extremely damaged. Some are not or nearly not affected. So this is a big difference. In Gaza, for example, there is an absolutely unique situation with tunnels. During this conflict, or prior to the conflict, for I think 11 or 15 years, Hamas was building tunnels under Gaza, and the overall number of kilometers, they say, from 500 to 1,000 kilometers of tunnels in this territory. Can you? I can't imagine. It's more than Moscow metro system doubled. So this is an extremely dense populated area, and the environmental damage, for example, by flooding these tunnels, is significant. So this is if we hear that there are attempts to counter fight the Hamas in Gaza, where they are hiding in the tunnels, and Israeli army has been using the flooding technique. So we were extremely worried that it may cause significant soil contamination by salty water, and also present considerable risks on the soil instability in the city, where the buildings will be simply crashing into this unstable soil. So, to answer your question, there are different areas. Effects are maybe different, but in general, any military conflict present a considerable blow to the environment. As your other part of the question was focusing on the good examples and how it was handled before. Well, I cannot say that we have the silver bullet here, that we have the solution. We can compare it to the war in Iraq, for example. It has not still recovered. We can compare it to the war in Syria, which is still far from being recovered and far from these consequences being offset. So if the basic conclusion here that it will take years. It will take years to restore the ecological system back to this normal situation, and it will require considerable investment. Where there is no investment, there is a very poor results, like in Iraq, for example. And on the positive side, what we are trying to convey to decision makers is that in recovery phase, post-war recovery phase, the recommendation is to include the green recovery right away in the plan, and plan investment accordingly. So you don't have to return to the previous situation, pre-war situation. Is not a good idea. The good idea is to, if I may, of course, say that there is a positive effect of war, if it can be, that you can skip the previous phases and go beyond and make a shortcut to the better, more environmentally friendly, more sustainable solutions, which the modern technology allows to use these investments wisely, not to go back to pre-war situation, but to go beyond. So this is what I would maybe sum up as the main recommendation. We're talking about the green recovery post-war plan, which the governments should take into consideration right away. And but because usually there is an attempt to cover the immediate needs. Okay, we will talk about it later. So all these environmental things, well, we'll deal with it later. We need to solve immediate problems right now, and we don't care how much it will be, environmentally damaging or environmentally unfriendly. We need to solve it right now. So what we're trying to say, no, you should wisely plan both the restoration and the future development. Then this restoration money will be used wisely for the progress of the country and the territory rather than just bring to status quo.
Thank you. That was very interesting explanation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Nara. Katerina, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the important work you are doing. It is truly amazing and probably our only hope, honestly. In the Middle Ages, when countries went to war, destroying crops, destroying cattle was a strategy. It was intentional. The world is so much more connected now. And I'm looking here at the stats you shared, the livestock losses, the crop losses, the perennial crop loss, honey production. This doesn't just affect the people of Ukraine, obviously. And the impact you pointed out on the vulnerable regions of our planet is significant. Africa, Southeast Asia. And there's probably no way to tell, but is there any evidence that destroying these natural elements is part of the strategy of Putin?
Well, I would definitely say that this going the deliberate destruction of infrastructure. This is by all means, this is no doubt about it. It's a deliberate destruction of infrastructure. I don't think that there is a goal of deliberate destruction of the ecosystems. This is seen as a collateral damage, I would say. But what is the fact that absolutely no one cares about that? So it goes as a collateral damage. We just destroy the infrastructure. We destroy the. They claim that they're destroying the military compounds, but it is not true. We all know that. So we have a lot of collateral damage in nature, and no one basically cares about that. So, however, destructing the Kakhovka Dam is a pretty obvious example of a combined effect of, we can call it ecocide by all means. And this you cannot say you just did not foresee the environmental consequences of that. In this respect, I would say that at least Kakhovka damage destruction is the clear example of the combined deliberate destruction of the ecosystem.
Ecocide is such a good word. It's so sad that we have this word. This is a new word in the last 20 years or so. It is so sad that we have the need to have this word, but that is exactly what this is. Thank you for championing the environment. Thank you for championing the well-being of the planet.
Well, the point is what we're also trying to convey. It is very sad, of course, that the people's casualties. It is extremely, extremely, extremely sad, and this is extremely worrying. But people can have the voice. The problem is that with environment, the environment does not have a voice. This is, and it is not nowhere in the sort of legislation or anything that can be. Bees do not have the voting rights. Dolphins do not have representation in governments. You see, so these are the absolutely underestimated, vulnerable species that have no one to protect them, to have their voice in the international community. And I think this is very much underestimated. There are mechanisms of how to bring the people's concern to the international agenda. It's much less that the environment is represented, and I have to say that it will backfire. It definitely will backfire this way or that way, and nature has this capacity on one hand to restore itself, which is very positive. On the other hand, it is if it is underestimated and if we pass the critical point, then we don't know what the consequences will be. We simply cannot estimate. With the science so far cannot. We can make projections, but we cannot estimate the full scope of the problems that will arise. And just small example, okay, climate change, we're all talking about climate change. And this is obvious, it is happening. I don't think there's any doubt anymore. There is an international scientific consensus on that. And we are having the international agreements, the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, blah, blah, blah. However, here we have the wars, and not only Ukrainian. Here we have the military conflicts, and we have I gave the example of how much more CO2 is going into the atmosphere on top of what we already have. What is the contribution? We don't even know exactly how much. But you look at the burning oil reservoirs every day, and you can imagine how much of this goes into the air, and we do not have the full estimate of the negative effect. So when I was starting my presentation with this debates that we had at the political rally, and what the presenters were saying, including the foreign minister, that we already have the global crisis. We already are facing the consequences of climate change. We're already trying to do something with that. We also agree that we are very, very slow. And okay, on top of that, we have the war. So this is the worst time when the people have to go into the military conflicts on top of the environmental crisis we're all facing globally. So this is a total madness, but that's what we do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your excellent explanation. And I'm a literature professor. Medieval is my period, but we for years have had eco-criticism, which is a look at traditional texts through the lens of how is the environment, how is the natural world represented, exactly the world that has no voice. This presentation of yours, this takes it to an entirely different level in real-time, real-world application. Very, very grateful for your wisdom and for sharing your findings with us. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I hope we get more understanding of international community of this. And what I also have to say, every voice matters. Every voice matters. So we all have to bring that. That's why I'm very happy that Victor invited me to speak in this panel, because that will be simply spread out to other people. And I think more people will start thinking about it, how responsible we are globally. It is no question now. I don't think anyone really has a doubt that we are absolutely interconnected in this world. And we cannot start, it's like in your flat, you cannot just start a mess in the kitchen and you will not affect your living room. So this is absolutely not possible. And we unfortunately even do not have an idea how bad it can be. We have estimates, but they are not totally reliable. We don't know what will be the effects. We know there will be effects. We don't know to what extent. But we are doing everything to make things worse.
Thank you, Valentin. I hope we all will be contributing at least something to make things better. And your talk is one drop in this common effort. Leslie, you have a question, please.
Yes, mine might be something of a minor point, but you gave various statistics and figures for the monetary amounts required to repair damage and things like that. And some of those were given in dollars, and some of them were given, at least on the slide, in euros, but you tended to say that they were in dollars. So I was just wanting clarification as to whether those figures were in dollars versus euros, because they do trade at different exchange rates.
That's very simple, because they're different sources. So maybe it was good to bring them all to dollars. But mind, these are just estimates. Don't take them in the face value. And I gave you an example of World Bank estimates, for example. They brought it from 411 billion to 400, don't remember, 69 or something. So these are fluid figures. It just gives you an idea that A, it is a lot, and B, it is growing. So that's a very simple message from these figures. just to give you simply an estimate of potential size of a problem.
Thanks.
Thank you, Leslie. In those estimates, Valentin, are there specific documents or plans in which they already are incorporated? In other words, I know there is a lot of people working on future reconstruction issues. So I assume that somehow environmental reconstruction is part of those plans, as you explained.
That's true, Victor. My hope is, and I think I have good grounds to have this hope, that again, my belief is that this war will end with bringing the perpetrators to court. That these damage will be assessed, finalized, and put on the table. And these environmental losses will be included in the overall bill. So that is also one of our goals, to give the better scientifically based evidence together with the government of Ukraine, to have a when we'll have the Nuremberg 2, then we will have all these figures on the table, and they should be scientifically based. But I'm sure that this should be taken into consideration, and we know it will be taken into consideration. We have international players like World Bank who are assessing this, and it will be put in the bill.
Thank you. If we have no more questions or comments, please, we are close to conclude this session. And if no one has comments, I will ask Dr. Shrey to say our customary greeting to our Ukrainian viewers, please, after which we conclude the recording.
Дорогі браття і сестри в Україні, ми зберігаємо вас у наших щоденних думках і молитвах і серцях. Нехай милосердний Бог тримає вас у своїй опіці. До наступного тижня. Прощаємося.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Героям слава!